So what is a portal card exactly? We have a few of them in scene right now, and what I use them for is to call out specific pieces of geometry that aren't lit properly by our style. And what I mean by that is we have a lot of linear and exponential height fog that'll shade areas in our game, but where we can't do that, we need to call out specific areas a little bit more, like this background detail right here. We use these things called portal cards. You can see these in use in other games as well. There is a nice GDC talk from one of the creators of Abzu, and they showed how they use it to basically do exactly what we're doing here, and also draw the player's attention to specific passageways that they should head to. And if these portal cards weren't there, all of that visual detail would be lost, and you wouldn't be able to call attention to that spot. We use it in a similar fashion. We even have it being used as kind of like a fake God ray up here as well. As you can see if I move that around, you know, it has that really nice effect. So let me just turn off all the portal cards for you real quick, and I can kind of give you a little bit of a preview of what it looks like without it. So look at that. Basically all that nice detail in the scene that I wanted to subtly have brought in is now gone. But these portal cards really add all that detail back in a really nice way. Alright, so I went ahead and grabbed one of these portal cards and brought it up close so we can see how it's made. Alright, so the different elements that make up a portal card. The first thing we have is depth, fade, distance. I'm going to go ahead and set that to 0 so you can get a really good idea of what it's doing. So you can look in the background right here. Depth fade is set to 0, and it's just a flat colored plane for the most part. But if I increase that, we start to get this fake fog effect, alright? Another thing we have is something called fade length. So basically, it's the distance between the camera and the mesh plane where the fade out starts. So what I mean by that is if I zoom towards this plane, you can see that it starts to fade out. You know, it's fogged, but then it gets clearer and clearer and clearer. By the time I get to it, it's completely faded out. Same thing with the one back here. If I zoom at it, zoom, it just fades right out. So we need that for a few reasons. If you have a camera and a player character that's moving towards a portal that you want to highlight, you don't want to then run up to it and clip through it, because that'll totally be immersion breaking and the illusion will be gone. So that's why we need fade length. And the other part we have is we have basically a U and V fall off that we can control. So it's kind of like the gradient and how it goes out towards the edges of the mesh that you have the shader on. So you don't want it to be hard per se. So if I really push it out there, you can see it creates a hard edge, right? That's also immersion breaking. It doesn't look very good. So we need to be able to control the fall off for the U and the V. And you can see here that I can make a solid square. I could take it and maybe even turn it into some type of like God ray, So just kind of make it like that, and then I could just extend this up a bit, and then when I kind of like put it through a ceiling and color it, it's going to have a God ray like effect. And you can see the one in the background actually right here. It's already doing that, and it looks pretty solid, and that works very well with our art style. So let's go ahead and move on to making this thing. Alright, so the first thing I did is I created a folder called Portal Card Tut. Within that folder, I'm going to go ahead and right click in the content browser, and then I'm going to go ahead and let's go to materials, let's go to material, make that new material, we'll call it Portal Card 1. Okay, go ahead and double click it, and let's take a look at that. Okay, so there's a few parts to this, and I'm going to start off with creating the emissive color. So in this instance, let's go ahead and press 3 on our keyboard and just left click anywhere. It's going to give you a vector 3. To make this easier, let's go over here and change it to like a really vibrant color. That'll make it really easy later on. Let's see here. So let's just go ahead and plug that into the emissive right away. Okay, so if I were just to, apply that, come back over here to our main editor window, and, well, let's just go ahead and create a material instance. So right click it, go create material instance, just press enter, just take the generic name, and now we have the instance. So we need to apply it to something. Go ahead and go to basic, drag out a plane into your scene, kind of face it towards you, Maybe increase the scale a little bit. Let's see, and then go ahead and apply that material instance to it. All right, so obviously it's glowing red because we have it in emissive right now, and that's all we have available. But now now when we start to work, we can see what we're creating and how it's working. So go back to your portal card material. Okay, so the first main part we're going to create is the depth fade. So go ahead and right click and type depth fade. Okay, so if you just type depth, you can see depth fade appears right here. Go ahead and grab that. Hold down 1 on your keyboard and left click. It's going to give you a constant. If you right click that, you can convert it to a parameter, and we're going to need that parameter to change within our material instance. Okay, so let's go ahead and name this depth fade distance. Go ahead and plug it on in. And then for the opacity on this, let's go ahead and hold down 1 again and left click, and go ahead and run it in and set that to 1. Go ahead and hold M on the keyboard and left click. It'll give you a multiply node. Run your color and the depth fade into the multiply and then into the emissive and hit apply. Okay, so you see here I got this error. Only transparent or post-processed materials can read from scene depth. That's absolutely true. So go ahead and click anywhere in this grid. And then over on the left-hand side under the details panel under materials, make sure you set the blend mode to translucent. Set the shading model to unlit. Okay? So if you don't do that, it's not going to work properly. So go ahead and apply that. Okay, let's go back to our scene here and let's take a little bit of a look. Okay, it doesn't really look like much right now, does it? Go ahead and open that material instance up by double clicking it. And over here we can see that the depth fade distance is currently set to 0. So if it's 0, it's just going to be like a flat plane like it is. You're not going to have any type of effect. So go ahead and start cranking that up until you start to get some type of effect. Now it's much easier if you were to like run it into another piece of geometry, and then you can start to see that the tapering effect a little bit better. So go ahead and play with that, scrub it back and forth, and you can start to see that that fogging effect is starting to occur. So in this instance, around like 6,000 or something gives me like quite a bit of depth. Look at that, it's crazy. It's kind of cool though. All right, so that is a good starting point. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we want to create a way to control the gradient on it, or make gradient on the surface. That way we don't have these hard edges right here. We can kind of make it taper nicely. So how do we do that? Well, first of all, we need to have some type of gradient. So right click, start type gradient, and just scroll down to linear gradient, because that's what we're going to be using for now. If we were to take this linear gradient and plug it into the opacity, what happens? Let's take a look. You can see that there is some fall off from left on the left, and then it gets more solid towards the middle on the right. If we were to look at our shader here, does it show up very well? Not yet. Let's make this a little more intense. So go ahead and press M and left click. Go ahead and run that into the multiply node, and then go ahead and create another constant. So 1, click, plug it in, and let's right click and convert it to a parameter. And we'll call it U fall off. All right, and then run that into our opacity. So now that's that U fall off is available in our portal card instance, portal card material instance. Go ahead and open that up once more. I'm going to set mine off to the side so you guys can see it. And I'm going to go ahead and set that a bit. Now, right now it looks kind of dark, which, there it goes. Let's see here. Okay, it looks like it's looks like the tapering is coming from the bottom right here. Maybe I have this rotated. There, now it'll look a little bit more like what you've seen in the material editor. So let's increase this fall off and decrease and kind of get a feel for what's going on here. Okay, so you can see the soft edge on the left. It's more solid towards this middle point right here. So that being said, we don't just want one edge, we want all of these edges. Now the really easy way to do this would be to use a radial gradient and just change the density. So that'll easily smooth out around the edges, but then you won't have the ability to create more geometric shaped little card volumes like this. Like God rays can be more fine and rectangular if you do it this way versus doing the straight up radial gradient. So let's go ahead and check that out. So let's see here. So we have the U fall from one direction, but we also want the opposite direction, right? So there's a few ways we could do that. I'm just going to go ahead and grab a 1 minus node. Let's see. I'm going to grab this 1 minus. I'm going to run this U into it, and now it's going to give me the gradient from the opposite direction. And I'm going to go ahead and copy this multiply node, plug it in here, put it in the same fall off, and then I want to combine those both together. Run that up to the opacity. Now, as far as I know, this should bring both, basically it'll fade in from both the left and the right edge to a solid middle color. Yep, so let's go ahead and take a look at that. Drag this down once again to kind of play with that fall off. Okay, so we can see that the linear gradient is working on both the left and the right. So let's do the top and the bottom as well. So we have the U. Let's go ahead and do the exact same thing for the V. And for that, all I'm going to do is just copy this node setup I already have, copy it. I'm going to go ahead and paste it. And instead of coming from the U, I'm just going to pull it from the V, just replace those, and then create another multiply, M left click. Sorry, I was kind of up on screen. M left click, run those into another multiply. Move this back, and then run that into the opacity. Go ahead and apply it. And instead of having this be U fall off underscore 1, let's go ahead and call it V fall off. Okay. So let's go ahead and grab our material instance. I'm going to set mine right over here. I'm going to set these numbers to like 2 and 2, the U and the V. And then you can, just kind of like mess with those, and you can see that you can, affect the gradients and have a little bit more of a geometric shape. So that's how we do that. So now we have depth, we have UV control. The last thing we want to add is a camera fade. So we move towards it, you don't just snap through it like that. See how it's just clipping through, it looks really bad. And you go to this working one, it just smoothly fades out when you get near it. So let's go ahead and make that happen. Go back to the material editor, and we're going to want to create a camera depth fade, okay? And then we're going to want to combine that with everything else on the opacity. So right click, type camera depth, camera depth fade. It kind of autofills it for us there, which is very nice. And then we want to have like a fade length. So go ahead and press 1, left click, right click, convert to parameter. And let's just call it fade length. Oops, it's not typing. Fade length. All right. And then we want to run this up to here. So let's go ahead and just press M for another multiply node, left click. Combine that with the UVs. Go ahead and plug it into opacity. Press apply. Now you should be able to set some type of distance for it, okay? So go ahead and grab your material instance once more. And currently the fade length is set to 0. So basically it'll start fading at 0, which is like right when you get to it, which is not what we want. Let's go ahead and start turning that up a bit. Let's keep turning up until it starts to fade. Okay, so you see it starting to fade. Okay, so go ahead and open up your material instance again. I'm going to set mine off to the side. And now we have fade length available. So basically, we don't want to clip through this like I described before. So that's what the fade length handles. So go ahead and start to scrub it. So right now it's at 0, so it's just going to clip right through. Just crank that up until it starts to fade a little bit. Okay, so you can see it's starting to fade. That means that the camera, I guess, is about 500-ish units away, and that's when it's going to start to fade at this point. So if I back up, it looks normal, normal, normal. I get within that 500 range, and the closer I get, it'll start to fade out until it's completely gone. No solid clipping right through it, So that kind of solves that problem. And basically that is it. Those are the main elements of a portal card. We have the depth fade, the fade length, the UV control. That's about it. You can add other stuff to this as well, and you can make some variations. I mentioned before that we could use a radial gradient. So instead of using like a linear gradient, you could just simply select a radial gradient exponential, and you could just simply run something into the density here, and it would create a nice sphere effect for you. So that's pretty straightforward. But overall, this is how you make a portal card. It's not too complicated, and it's not that expensive either, as long as you're not stacking them on top of each other and trying to render through a bunch of them. So feel free to try it out in your own game. Drop a message in the comments if you guys use this or found it helpful. If you have any more questions about it, or you'd like to see it expanded or extended in some way, feel free to let me know. And